My beautiful friends, let's do a soul tribe reading. I'm happy to see you. It's been a few days since I've been here. Mercury in retrograde is coming to an end tomorrow. And I've been posting funny memes, which I know are triggering some people. They're like, it's not funny anymore. I know, Mercury in retrograde is rough. I know that I've been experiencing some old wounds resurfacing. I think I mentioned this the other day. I've been experiencing a lot of old wounds that I've been working very hard on healing, but throughout Mercury in retrograde and the partial solar eclipse and Venus being in retrograde, it's been a very intense time for people, especially with triggers and wounding. And, yesterday I sat in the dark and cried for a while. I'm fine. But I just needed to release it, and there's no shame in releasing that energy. But I know that I've been finding it hard. So I imagine we're connected. So I imagine some of you are finding it difficult as well. Just know that Mercury is going direct. Is that the right terminology? Is going direct starting tomorrow. I believe there's a little bit of residual energy, is that the right word, that remains for a little while after Mercury in retrograde, just like there's a shadow period right before Mercury in retrograde. But things should start to feel a little bit better soon. Things should start to feel a little bit easier soon. Less triggers is what I'm hearing. Mercury in retrograde, I don't know anything about the planets, but I listen to a lot about it. And my understanding is that things that are still unhealed come up for review in Mercury in retrograde so that we can not see if we've healed them, but to kind of keep working through those energies. Anyway. So I wanted to come on today and do a reading and read you a little bit of that book, The Inner Work. Chapter 9 is actually quite long because it's really dissecting the wounded. That's not the right book. That's not even the right book. Healing the wounded themes of consciousness. So it actually breaks down each wound of consciousness. So it's very lengthy. So I thought I would come on today. Whoa. That's how long that chapter is. So I won't be reading the whole chapter today, but I will read some of it. We'll start on that next chapter. And I felt really called I still have that childhood inner healing deck sitting there, which I will use again because I almost feel like we're going to go through the whole deck. But I felt called to get a different deck today, and this one might be a little hard. It's called The Sacred Wounding, and I've used it in some of my readings, my love readings. But it talks about wounds, just like that book, Wounded Themes of Consciousness. This one talks about wounds and where they come from and how we overcompensate for these wounds or undercompensate for these wounds. And it's quite a big deck. And I also have the book that goes with it. When I reached out to the creator of this deck to tell them how much I loved this deck and how much I loved using it in my readings, even though I haven't used it in a few weeks. And she actually sent me the book she wrote a book that is about all of these cards. It doesn't come with the deck, but she wrote a book and she actually sent it to me. So it kind of breaks down each wound. Now my eye is twitching. It breaks down each wound. So I wanted to get a few of these cards for us today. Just keep in mind that this may be a little bit triggering. And while it might not be your wound, it might describe a wound that someone you know, or, maybe someone that you're connected to, or a parent. Maybe you'll hear it and you'll be like, oh, it makes so much sense why my parents were that way, or however it's resonating to you. Keep in mind though, this can be a little bit triggering. So I'm going to see what comes out. We're just going to get a few. And we'll see. Oh gosh. Oh, there we go. I did it. We'll see what wounds we need to talk about today. Like I said, you might not directly resonate with the wound. I actually find that I resonate with a lot of these in different ways. I find all of them very helpful. So we'll see what comes out for us. So let's begin. Deep breath. It's okay. You're safe here. It's okay. Deep breath. So let's see what we need to hear from this sacred wounding deck. So we'll start with 1. Baby steps. We'll start with 1. What do we have? We have the humiliation wound, needing to heal the humiliation wound. And it does give a little overview of what this wound is, but it mentions it in the book, so I'm just going to go right to the book. So, humiliation wound. I wish there was a table of, not that I use them, but I do wish there was a table of contents in this book, but whatever. So this is all the information on a humiliation wound. Whoa. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. Eleanor Roosevelt. The humiliation wound is a lingering imprint of shame, the feeling of having been exposed, ridiculed, or made to feel small. Trigger! It is the voice in your head that tells you to shrink, to stay silent, to avoid being seen for fear of judgment. This wound often stems from past experiences where your vulnerability was met with cruelty, where being yourself led to rejection, laughter, or criticism. Over time, you may have learned to dim your light, to hide your true self, or to overcompensate through perfectionism, people-pleasing, or avoidance of risk. But shame is not a reflection of your worth. It is a distortion of it. Healing the humiliation wound is about reclaiming your voice, your space, and your right to exist unapologetically. It is about recognizing that no one has the power to define you unless you hand them that power. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become. The antidote to shame is self-acceptance, the radical act of standing in your truth without apology. When you release the fear of what others think, when you stop letting past humiliation dictate your present, you step into freedom. You do not need to be perfect to be worthy. You only need to be you. When was the first time you remember feeling humiliated? How did it shape your behavior? Actually, I'm going to read these as, these are journaling questions. So write that, like, if you feel called to journal about it, you can write down these questions and then reflect on how you feel and answer yourself. Do I avoid situations where I might feel seen, judged, or put on the spot? Why? How do I respond to making mistakes? Do I laugh it off, over-apologize, or withdraw? Have I ever held myself back from an opportunity because I feared embarrassment? Do I criticize myself before others can, as a form of self-protection? Guilty. How do I react when others receive public praise or criticism? If I no longer feared humiliation, what risks would I take in my personal or professional life? What would it look like to embrace imperfection as a part of my journey rather than something to fear? Do I equate making mistakes with failure? And where did that belief originate? How can I practice self-compassion when I feel shame rising? Humiliation wound. A deep emotional scar caused by experiences of shame, embarrassment, or public rejection, leading to a fear of exposure and an ingrained need to protect oneself from ridicule. This wound manifests as hypersensitivity to criticism, guilty, avoidance of situations where one might be judged, or an overwhelming fear of making mistakes. There may be an internalized belief that vulnerability leads to humiliation, causing some to hide their true selves, downplay their achievements, or adopt self-deprecating humor to avoid being the target of others' laughter. Some may struggle with perfectionism, believing that if they are flawless, they cannot be humiliated, while others may avoid risk entirely, choosing invisibility over the possibility of failure. Emotionally, this wound can lead to feelings of deep shame, insecurity, and a reluctance to step into positions of leadership or visibility. Physically, it may manifest as heat rising to the face, shame response, tightness in the throat, difficulty speaking up, or chronic tension in the shoulders, carrying the weight of past embarrassment. Over time, the humiliation wound can result in low self-esteem, fear of public speaking or self-expression, and an internalized belief that one's worth is fragile. Watch for patterns of avoiding attention, over-apologizing, or feeling extreme discomfort when receiving praise. This is what I mean. I resonate with most of these cards on some level. Anyway. So, suppressing the humiliation wound by either overcompensating through arrogance and control or withdrawing completely to avoid any risk of exposure. Instead of addressing the fear of shame, some may overcorrect by becoming highly critical of others, ensuring they are never in a position to be judged. This can manifest as adopting a defensive or sarcastic persona, putting others down to maintain a sense of superiority, or controlling situations to avoid vulnerability. Others may go in the opposite direction, silencing themselves, avoiding leadership, or downplaying their capabilities to ensure they are never noticed or called out. Some may suppress this wound by becoming overly agreeable, trying to please everyone to avoid criticism, or rejecting compliments to keep expectations low. Watch for patterns of deflecting praise, struggling with visibility, or feeling intense discomfort in situations where imperfection might be exposed. Beneath both extremes lies the same longing, to feel safe in one's own skin, without fear of ridicule or rejection. Good job, we made it through one. So let's get another one. What does my soul tribe need to hear about wounding? Breaking repetitive pattern syndrome. Repetitive pattern. Would that be under R or P? Probably P. Nope. R, repetitive. Yes, it's under R. If you want something different, you have to do something different. Jack Canfield. Repetitive pattern syndrome is the experience of reliving the same struggles, attracting the same toxic relationships, or making the same choices despite wanting a different outcome. This wound convinces you that change is impossible and that no matter how much you hope for something new, you will always end up back where you started. It manifests as self-sabotage, falling into familiar yet unhealthy dynamics, or feeling powerless to break cycles that seem ingrained in your life. You may ask yourself, why does this keep happening to me? But the truth is, the pattern persists because part of you still unconsciously plays by the same old rules. Healing this wound begins with radical self-awareness and intentional action. The cycle only continues when you react the same way, choose the same comfort zones, or ignore the lessons life is trying to teach you. If you want something different, you must be willing to do something different. That means setting boundaries where you never have before, choosing self-respect over familiarity. I always struggle with that word. And walking away from what no longer serves you, even when it feels uncomfortable. The moment you disrupt the pattern, the spell is broken. You are not doomed to repeat the past. You are being invited to rise above it. Journaling prompts. What recurring themes or struggles have appeared throughout my life? Wasn't I just talking about Mercury in retrograde? Do I recognize any repeated patterns in my relationships, careers, or personal habits? Have I ever blamed circumstances or others for patterns that I may be subconsciously repeating? What fears arise when I think about breaking free from a familiar cycle? Do I believe I have the power to create different outcomes, or do I feel stuck in fate? How do I react when I notice myself slipping into an old pattern? Do I embrace it, resist it, or shame myself? Have I mistaken predictability for safety even when it has caused me pain? What is one new way I can respond the next time I notice a reoccurring situation? How would my life change if I truly believed I was capable of choosing a new path? What supportive habits or mindsets can help me consciously break free from repetitive cycles? A deeply ingrained cycle of repeating the same emotional, relational, or behavioral patterns, often rooted in unresolved trauma, subconscious conditioning, or karmic imprints. This wound manifests as feeling stuck, reliving similar painful experiences, or attracting the same unhealthy dynamics despite efforts to change. Some may struggle with self-awareness, failing to recognize their role in the cycle, while others may feel powerless to break free, believing they are destined to repeat the past. There may be an internalized belief that change is unsafe or impossible, leading to self-sabotage or fear of stepping out of the familiar, even when it is harmful. Emotionally, this wound can create frustration, learned helplessness, and deep inner conflict, desiring transformation but unconsciously resisting it. Physically, it may manifest as chronic stress from repeated emotional triggers, digestive issues, difficulty processing past wounds, or exhaustion from reliving similar traumas. Over time, unresolved repetitive patterns can lead to stagnation, loss of confidence, and a reluctance to take new risks. Watch for patterns of attracting the same type of relationships, making the same mistakes, or struggling to break habits that no longer serve you. Suppressing the repetitive pattern syndrome wound by either ignoring the cycle, convincing oneself that these patterns are random and unavoidable, or overcorrecting by attempting to control every outcome. Some may refuse to acknowledge they are caught in a loop, blaming external circumstances instead of exploring the deeper reasons behind their repeated experiences. This can manifest as denial, deflection, or continuing to engage in harmful behaviors while hoping for different results. Others may go in the opposite direction, becoming hypervigilant, obsessing over self-improvement, or fearing any misstep that might lead back to an old pattern. This can result in rigidity, avoidance of emotional risks, or perfectionism that stifles personal growth. Some may suppress this wound by staying in a cycle of overanalyzing rather than taking tangible steps towards change. Watch for patterns of either avoiding introspection or overcompensating with excessive control, both which stem, I'm drooling a little, both which stem from the same need to trust oneself, embrace new choices, and consciously disrupt limiting cycles. All right, that's another one done. Let's get another one. So humiliation wound, pattern syndrome. Let's get another one. What else does my soul tribe need to hear? Fear of failure. Fear of failure. That's loud. It's a truck. Fear of failure. Okay, there's two more that came out, which I'm going to get, and then that's all the ones we'll get for today, and then I'll read a little bit of that book. So fear of failure. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of the success. The fear of failure is not really about failing. It is about what failure means. It is the belief that if you fall short, you are inadequate, that if you try and don't succeed, you will be judged, ridiculed, or worse, left behind. This wound convinces you that mistakes define you, that imperfection is unacceptable, and that it is safer to stay where you are than risk failing. It keeps you frozen in hesitation, waiting for the right time or perfect conditions, or the guarantee that you won't fail. But failure is not the end. It is the doorway to mastery, resilience, and growth. The only true failure is refusing to begin. Healing the fear of failure requires shifting your perspective. Failure is not proof of your inadequacy. It is the evidence that you are trying, growing, and expanding beyond your comfort zone. Every misstep teaches you something. Every setback refines you. Success is not about getting it right the first time. It is about learning, adjusting, and continuing forward despite the stumbles. When you embrace failure as a necessary part of your journey, it no longer holds power over you. You stop fearing the fall and start trusting yourself to rise. What does failure mean to me? These are the journaling prompts. What does failure mean to me, and where did I learn that definition? Have I ever avoided something I wanted to do because I was afraid I wouldn't succeed? How do I react when I make mistakes? Do I reflect, freeze, or try and hide them? Do I equate my worth with my achievements? Why or why not? What is the one failure I have experienced that ultimately led to growth or better opportunities? How do I handle setbacks? Do I adjust, or do I let them define me? What would I attempt if I knew failure was impossible? How do I speak to myself when I don't meet my own expectations? What small step can I take towards a goal today, even if it's imperfect? What would life look like if I embraced failure as a teacher rather than a threat? A deeply ingrained fear that making mistakes, falling short, or not meeting expectations equates to personal inadequacy. This wound manifests as procrastination, perfectionism, or an avoidance of risks that might lead to disappointment. There might be an internalized belief that failure is a reflection of worth rather than a necessary part of growth, leading to cycles of self-doubt, anxiety, and hesitation. Some may struggle to start projects, fearing that they won't be good enough, while others may overwork themselves to exhaustion in an attempt to prevent failure altogether. My throat's closing over. Emotionally, this wound can create feelings of shame, embarrassment, or regret over past mistakes, making it difficult to move forward. Physically, it may manifest as muscle tension, digestive distress, or restlessness from an underlying fear of being judged or falling behind. Over time, fear of failure can lead to missed opportunities, stifled potential, and an inability to experience the richness of life due to excessive self-criticism. Watch for patterns of playing small, avoiding challenges, or tying self-worth to external achievements. Suppressing the fear of failure by either avoiding meaningful pursuits altogether or becoming hyper-focused on external success to mask internal insecurities. Instead of addressing the wound, some may refuse to engage in anything where failure is a possibility, convincing themselves that staying in their comfort zone is smart or safe. This can manifest as chronic indecision, self-sabotage, or underachieving, despite having the potential for more. Others may go in the opposite direction, obsessively chasing accomplishments, constantly striving for perfection, or defining their entire identity by success. Some may even reject the idea of failure itself, blaming external circumstances or avoiding accountability to protect their ego. Watch for patterns of over-explaining mistakes, guilty, struggling to handle constructive criticism, or fearing vulnerability because it might expose imperfections. Beneath the resistance lies the same longing to take risks, to trust in one's resilience, and to embrace failure as a stepping stone rather than an end point. Oh my gosh, that's on page 100 and 101. Magic. There's a very loud truck outside. Needing to heal inner child. So, heal. I want to say heal inner child. Let me see. H, I'm going the wrong way. I do not know my alphabet. Where are you? Okay. Apparently it's under I. Inner child wound. I know this one's going to be rough. The child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. The inner child wound is a silent ache of unmet needs, the lingering echo of childhood where love, safety, or validation may have been conditional or absent entirely. It is a part of you that still longs to be seen, still craves the acceptance that was once withheld. This is making me a little bit emotional. still craves the acceptance that was once withheld, still wonders if love must always be earned. This wound manifests in patterns of people-pleasing, fear of rejection, emotional reactivity, or a deep sense of not belonging. It whispers that your worth is fragile, that your emotions are burdensome, that to be loved, you must not take up too much space. And so you shrink, you suppress, you learn to meet others' needs before your own, hoping that one day it will be enough to finally feel whole. But healing the inner child wound is not about waiting for someone else to finally give you the love you never received. It is about becoming the person your younger self needed. It is about holding yourself in the ways you were never held, speaking the words of reassurance no one has ever said, and allowing yourself to feel, to express, to exist without apology. When you embrace your inner child, you stop waiting for the world to validate you and start realizing that the love, safety, and belonging you seek has always been within you, waiting for you to return home. Journaling prompts. Hang on, I have a tear. My eyes are leaking. So journaling prompts. What is my earliest memory of feeling unsafe, unseen, or unworthy? How did my caregivers respond to my emotions, and how has that shaped the way I express my feelings now? I wasn't allowed to have emotions. Do I struggle to play, be spontaneous, or engage in activities without a productive outcome? What childhood needs went unmet, and how do those wounds show up in my adult relationships? When do I feel most emotionally when do I feel most emotionally vulnerable, and how do I typically respond? Do I allow myself to express my needs without guilt or fear of rejection? What brings me pure childlike joy, and how often do I engage in it? If I could speak to my inner child, what would they need to hear from me today? Have I ever dismissed my childhood pain by comparing it to others who had it worse? How can I nurture my inner child today in a way that feels safe and healing? So, the inner child wound. A deep and unresolved emotional imprint from childhood, often formed through unmet needs, neglect, trauma, or loss of innocence. This wound manifests as patterns of self-sabotage, difficulty with trust, or a persistent sense of emptiness that no amount of external success can fill. There may be an internalized belief that love, joy, or safety must be earned, leading to cycles of overachievement, people-pleasing, or emotional withdrawal. Some may experience hypersensitivity to rejection, struggling with self-worth when faced with criticism or perceived abandonment, Others may have difficulty setting boundaries, fearing that expressing personal needs will lead to punishment or rejection. Emotionally, this wound can create patterns of shame, longing for parental approval, or struggling to feel. It cut me off. Physically, it may manifest as digestive issues, stored emotional trauma, tension in the chest, fear of expressing needs, or a deep sense of exhaustion from carrying past wounds. I need a Kleenex, hang on. Where was I? Over time, an unhealed child wound can result in difficulty forming secure relationships, avoiding vulnerability, or suppressing authentic joy. Watch for patterns of emotional regression, repeating childhood coping mechanisms, or feeling disconnected from playfulness and spontaneity. Suppressing the inner child wound by either rejecting all childlike qualities, becoming overly serious, rigid, or hyper-independent, or by avoiding responsibility and clinging to childish patterns of behavior. Instead of addressing the pain, some may dismiss their childhood experiences, convincing themselves that it wasn't that bad, while unknowingly replicating the same wounds in their adult life. This can manifest as rejecting joy, struggling with emotional intimacy, or being highly critical of oneself for needing love and support. Others may go in the opposite direction, avoiding maturity by refusing to take accountability, expecting others to rescue them, or engaging in escapist behaviors to avoid emotional pain. Some may suppress this wound by externalizing it, caring for others' needs as a way to avoid tending to their own inner child. Watch for patterns of emotional detachment, difficulty accessing genuine joy, or seeing vulnerability as a weakness. Beneath the resistance lies the same longing, to feel safe, nurtured, and unconditionally loved just as they are. And then we have self-sabotaging behaviors or patterns, self-sabotaging patterns. Spirit's not messing around with this one. All right. If you're always waiting for the right time, you'll spend your whole life waiting. Self-sabotage is the unconscious resistance to your own growth, the part of you that hesitates, procrastinates, or creates obstacles just as you begin to move forward. It convinces you that you are not ready, that success will come with consequences, that failure is inevitable, so why risk it? This wound often forms from past disappointments, fear of rejection, or deeply ingrained beliefs that happiness and success are not safe. It manifests as overthinking, perfectionism, avoiding opportunities, or even creating chaos in moments of progress. The real fear is not failure, it is change. Healing self-sabotage requires learning to recognize fear without obeying it. Growth will never feel comfortable, but discomfort is not danger, it is expansion. You do not need to wait until you feel fully ready because readiness is built in motion. When you stop expecting failure and start believing in your own resilience, you step out of your own way. You are not meant to live your life in cycles of hesitation. You are meant to rise, and that moment you stop holding yourself back, you realize you were capable all along. What patterns of self-sabotage have I noticed in my life, and when did they begin? These are journaling prompts. Do I fear success as much as I fear failure? Why or why not? What subconscious beliefs do I hold about my own worthiness for happiness and achievement? How do I react when things start going well? Do I embrace it or look for ways it could go wrong? Have I ever avoided an opportunity because I was afraid of the expectations it would bring? In what areas of my life do I make excuses instead of taking action? Do I delay progress through procrastination, distractions, or waiting for the perfect time? What emotions arise when I think about fully stepping into my power and potential? How can I create a healthier response to fear without resorting to self-sabotage? What is one small action I can take today to move past a self-sabotaging habit? So, self-sabotaging patterns. A deeply ingrained tendency to undermine one's own success, happiness, or personal growth, often rooted in fear, unresolved trauma, or conditioned beliefs about worthiness. This wound manifests as procrastination, perfectionism, self-destructive habits, or pushing away opportunities or relationships that could lead to fulfillment. Some may struggle with an internalized belief that success will bring disappointment, judgment, and additional pressure, leading them to subconsciously create obstacles for themselves. Others may fear failure so intensely that they avoid trying altogether, staying in a cycle of stagnation rather than risking discomfort. There may be a pattern of making progress only to backtrack, whether through self-doubt, impulsive decisions, or tolerating toxic situations that reinforce old wounds. Emotionally, this wound can create frustration, low self-esteem, and cycles of regret. Physically, it may manifest as fatigue from resisting growth, digestive issues, fear of moving forward, or tension in the legs, hesitation to take the next step. Over time, unresolved self-sabotaging patterns can result in missed opportunities, chronic dissatisfaction, and a deep disconnect from one's true potential. Watch for patterns of avoiding success, fear of visibility, or making choices that reinforce limiting beliefs. Suppressing self-sabotage by either ignoring patterns, convincing oneself that setbacks are purely external, or overcorrecting through hyper-control, fearing any mistake will lead to failure. Some may refuse to acknowledge their own role in repetitive struggles, blaming, circumstances or other people instead of recognizing unconscious fears at play. This can manifest, I shine brighter than diamonds, and I'm worth more than them too. That's your affirmation. You are worth more than a diamond. Dang straight. Where was I? This may manifest as repeating toxic cycles, excusing self-destructive behaviors, or avoiding personal responsibility. Others may go in the opposite direction, over-planning, micromanaging every aspect of their life, or becoming so afraid of failure that they lose flexibility and joy. This can lead to burnout, rigidity, or an inability to take necessary risks. Some may suppress this wound by convincing themselves they don't actually want the things they sabotage, creating narratives that justify staying small. Watch for patterns of perfectionism, avoidance, or an unconscious resistance to abundance and ease, all of which stem from the same need to believe in one's worthiness and ability to succeed without self-imposed limitations. And on the bottom of the deck, we do have the needing to address a control wound, and I feel called to read it because it's on the bottom of the deck and I looked at it. I made eye contact with it. So I do want to read this. I might have to charge my phone first. So a control wound. A control wound. Control wound. I do know my alphabet. The moment you stop trying to control everything is the moment your life begins to flow. I like that. I'll be right back. I'm back. Power of the internet. You didn't even know I was gone. Control wounds. Control convinces you that safety lies in planning every step, predicting every outcome, and holding tight to everything and everyone around you. It tells you that the world is unpredictable, and so the only way to protect yourself is to shape every circumstance to your will. But control is an illusion, a false sense of security built on fear. It creates a life... Hang on, I got a cough. Just 1 minute. It creates a life of constant tension where peace is elusive and trust is something you must constantly strive for yet fully never embrace. The truth is, trying to control the uncontrollable only keeps you trapped in a cycle of exhaustion, anxiety, and disconnection. Healing the control wound is about surrendering to the flow of life, trusting that not everything needs to be in your grasp for you to be safe. It's about recognizing that true strength comes from not holding on, but from letting go. Letting go of expectations, of rigid outcomes, the need to manipulate every situation. When you release the need to control, you allow life to unfold in ways that are far more expansive than you could have ever planned. And in that space, you rediscover peace, trust, and the freedom to experience life as it is without the need to dictate every detail. Journaling prompts. What situations make me feel the most out of control, and how do I typically respond? Do I trust others to handle things, or do I feel the need to oversee everything myself? What was my earliest memory of feeling powerless, and how has it shaped my need for control? How do I react when plans change unexpectedly? Not good. Not good. Do I associate surrender with weakness or failure? Why? What areas of my life feel rigid, and how might that be limiting me? Have I ever lost something important by trying too hard to control it? What would it feel like to trust that I am safe even when things don't go as planned? How do I differentiate between healthy boundaries and excessive control? What is one small way I can practice letting control of in my daily life? So, the control wound. A deeply rooted fear of uncertainty, chaos, or powerlessness leading to an overwhelming need to control circumstances, people, or outcomes. This wound manifests as hypervigilance, perfectionism, and an inability to trust the natural flow of life. There may be a deep-seated belief that if control is lost, everything will fall apart, resulting in excessive planning, difficulty delegating, and micromanaging others. Some may struggle with surrender, feeling uneasy when they are not in charge, while others may rely on rigid structures or rules to create a false sense of stability. Emotionally, this wound can lead to anxiety, frustration, or burnout, as reality rarely conforms to the expectations set. Physically, it may manifest as jaw tension, digestive distress, all of them said digestive distress, or chronic headaches due to suppressed emotions or unrelenting stress. Over time, the need for control can push others away, limit spontaneity, and create a life that feels safe but devoid of true freedom. Watch for patterns of overthinking, difficulty trusting others, or struggling to adapt when plans change. Suppressing the control wound by rejecting all responsibility, embracing chaos, and refusing to engage in planning or decision-making. Instead of addressing the underlying fear, some may take a passive approach, convincing themselves that nothing is within their control, leading to indecisiveness, avoidance, or reliance on others to make choices for them. This can manifest as procrastination, dismissing structure, or failing to set goals out of fear of failure. Others may adopt an extreme go-with-the-flow attitude as a defense mechanism, avoiding accountability or refusing to acknowledge the consequences of their actions. Some may even resent authority figures, projecting their suppressed desire for control onto others. Watch for patterns of resisting commitment, struggling with follow-through, or allowing external forces to dictate life's direction. Beneath the surface lies the same fear. The need for control remains, waiting to be understood and balanced rather than denied. So, I think that's enough of that for today. Do you guys remember when I first got this deck and I was hesitant to use it because I knew that it was like, oh, that deck is going to trigger me. But it's so helpful. It's so helpful to realize these wounds and to try and heal them. It frees you. It frees you. So I might get that deck again for us, but I actually really like the cards that came up for us today. But anyway, so let's read that book now. We're on chapter 9. And like I said, it's a long one. I'm not even going to count the pages, but I'm not really good at math, but someone can do the math for me. 125 to 190. There's no way I could read that in one go. No way. That's a long chapter. So, healing the wounded themes of consciousness. Accept responsibility for your life. Know that it is you who will get you to where you want to go, no one else. Les Brown. The following chapters have been prepared for you to use as a practical how-to guide throughout your inner work journey. Each theme will be outlined to show common triggers, traumas, root programs, defense mechanisms, overall view of life, and how to heal them. Use these chapters to help you identify the themes of consciousness for yourself and build awareness of where you find yourself getting stuck. When exploring the wounded themes of consciousness, it is important to note that they represent layers of resistance to accepting our true nature of unconditional love. They represent who we are not. We are already and have always been loved and innocent. It is only the wounded themes of consciousness that blind us from this truth, like clouds blocking the sun. So, I've already sent you guys, or I've already, in the other readings, I've already shown you these so you can screenshot them. But this is just, remember that chart that I showed you? This is just the first aspect, which is themes of wounding. 3D reality, self as body, suffering, victim abuser mentality, insecurity, violation, inadequacy, distrust, loss, overwhelm, judgment, rejection. Because the themes of consciousness are a spectrum, there will be certain ones that you find your ego is more attached to than others based on its conditioning. You'll also notice that there are certain themes you're at peace with already. It is possible for you to spend most of your time in a liberating theme, such as accountability and self-motivation, but periodically still struggle with an unhealed wound of insecurity or judgment. This is so true. You may also find that you may also find that you experience different themes in different areas of your life. For example, acceptance in your career, but distrust when it comes to relationships and love. It is important to clarify that experiencing the wounded themes of consciousness is a natural part of being human, and none of them are better or worse than others. Allow yourself to be where you are with curiosity rather than judgment. Feeling your feelings is what brings about healing. Suffering comes from stuck emotions, either through attachment and identification with them as who we think we are, or by bypassing. This always happens to me once I've been talking or reading for a while. My communication starts to break down. 1 second. Try again. All defense mechanisms or side effects of unreconciled wounds are created by either overcompensating to mask our pain or avoiding feeling our pain. As a final caveat, is that how you say it? Be compassionate with yourself regarding anything you may discover, and remember the ego is not personal and has been attaching itself to limitations innocently without knowing any better. You are not your ego's attachments and resistances. We're all in this together. You can do this. We can do it. As we progress through each theme of consciousness, we encourage you to evaluate the degree of exposure you may or may not have with each theme. Assess the relevance, degree and regularity you have with each theme's associated beliefs, traumas, triggers, or thoughts. Fill in your own spectrum of consciousness appropriately. How to fill out your spectrum of consciousness. So, I wish that I could rip this out of the book and give it to you, but I also took a picture of this. Maybe I'll just show it to you now, and if you can print it off so that you can fill it in yourself. Hang on, I'll just show it to you. And if you can't fill it out, just follow along and journal about it while I'm reading. There goes my throat. So, keep the theme blank if you feel you never spend time in its energy. Fill in the theme 1 node if you feel you rarely experience the accompanying beliefs, traumas, triggers, or thoughts. Fill in 2 nodes if you experience them sometimes. Fill in 3 nodes if you experience them often. I can feel my communication breaking. And fill in the theme completely if you have experienced them consistently. So 0 is never, 1 is rarely, 2 sometimes, 3 often, 4 consistently. Oh, look. Oh, yes. If you prefer a printable spectrum of consciousness, you can download a copy at theinnerwork.com/media. So you can just print one off if you have a printer. And if you don't, you can go to the library and print it off. So theinnerwork.com/media. You can print one off. All right. So wound of rejection. The trigger, rejection. Root program, I am unlovable. Trauma, physical abuse, emotional, mental abuse, humiliation, racism, prejudice, religious severity, harassment, divorce, abandonment, poverty. Primary emotion, shame. Defense mechanism, overcompensating. Narcissism, pathological lying, recklessness, megalomania. I don't even know what that means. Criminal behavior. Media choices, cancel culture, hate movements, crime, abuse, deviance, grotesque, dark. Defense mechanism, avoidant. I don't think I can say this word. Unaliving ideation, isolation, low self-esteem, psychosis, schizophrenia, drug, alcohol abuse, self-deprecating, interests, values, atheism, superiority, power, moral extremity, I don't know, anarchy. Physical manifestation examples, acne, self-rejection, anorexia, self-hatred, thyroid, shame, yeast infection, self-denial, seizures, rejecting reality, upper back pain, feeling rejected. I'm going to remember that upper back pain one. Approach to challenges, seek to destroy, seek to hurt, I can't say it because YouTube, Esoteric calls it the YouTube overlords. They're very particular about the words that we say. Lose control, gaslight, denial. Thoughts, I am unworthy of love. I am not good enough. Everyone rejects me. I am ugly. I hate myself and my life. Healing, I am innocent. I was projected onto. What it's teaching us, rejection of abuse, endured boundaries. Affirmations, it is healthy for me to identify abuse. I give this shame back to its sender. I am always worthy of love. I matter. My life matters. Boundaries are healthy. And then the overview. So yeah, it breaks down each wound. So that's why it's so long. The most extreme of the mind's destructive beliefs is the delusion of shame. Shame stems from the lie that we are rejected, invalid, or beyond the graces of love and forgiveness. It believes itself to be unlovable, unwanted, a waste, and destined for an existence of suffering. Rejection represents the complete opposite of the truth and is the ultimate forgetfulness of who we truly are. It can range from mild embarrassment, repression of our sexuality, racism, prejudice, all the way to feeling like the epitome of evil and cursed or rejected by divinity or God. The mind's story of shame is most likely stemming from a past experience of being rejected, abused, or neglected to some degree by a supposed loving figure, usually parents, society, or religion. Our innocent mind then believes itself not to be worthy of love, and it should be embarrassed and ashamed of itself or a particular aspect of the human condition that is being rejected. In its mild form, rejection is taught to us by parents, friends, or society by telling us what we're allowed to be or not be. It is modeled through mocking our skin color, hairstyle, dress or appearance, unique gifts, personality traits, etc. To our impressionable mind, this teaches us that our innocent self should be different from what it is, thus making us feel ashamed for being ourselves. Racism and all forms of discrimination are rooted in shame. Anyone who has suffered the trauma of direct or systematic racism will unfortunately have wounds around this theme. In religion, rejection may come from being taught to fear God or divinity. No, rejection may come from being taught to fear a God or divinity that can reject, curse, or damn us to fiery hell of torture. The misunderstanding that this causes is for us to believe that even an all-loving God could reject us, thus creating an overwhelming sense of worthlessness. However, nothing could be further from the truth. Divinity's love is unconditional and always available. It is only the ego's rejection of this unconditional love that entraps and limits us to spread the message of rejecting divinity. Through a trauma of rejection, the ego becomes attached to the belief of worthlessness and identifies with it. The mind then proceeds to push away anything that is loving and promoting innocence out of fear of being rejected by it again. This wound, when taken to its extreme, drives all grotesque experiences of life. Unaliving. Oh my gosh, I can't say most of these words here. Murdering, genocide, hate crimes, torture, etc. The ego in this wound believes itself to be above the law and rules don't apply to it because it is an exception. In a twisted form of narcissism, the ego of shame tests divine love by becoming completely vile in order to see if it will still be lovable. In this distortion, rejection and trauma equal love. Excuse me. It therefore feels that it is loved through hurting others and deriving a sense of meaning, power, and worth because it can cause pain. Thus, rejection represents the ego's desperation and cry for love by ironically trying to prove how unloved it is. To overcompensate for the wound of rejection, it is possible to outwardly appear charismatic, charming, or perfect while secretly holding incredibly dark, selfish, or thoughts, or hidden behaviors. Hang on. The revealing nature of such presentations is that the ego cannot handle having its impulses blocked and will resort to extreme self-deprecating behavior, such as hurting itself or others in an expression of thinking God or life is cursing it. It will reject all accountability and believes that any of its hurtful and unloving impulses... That's just Michelle messaging me during Soul Tribe, as she always does. And believes any of its hurtful and unloving impulses should be loved and allowed without consequences. However, because this is the theme of complete spiritual delusion, the most painful consequences stem from attachment to the wound of rejection. The ego tends to get itself rejected due to shameful choices. This creates a validation cycle of self-rejection and rejection from others. It is important to address any wounds of rejection we may be holding on to, no matter how insignificant we may feel they are, because the energy of shame is like a festering sore which slowly decays the soul if left unhealed. Triggers. The wound of rejection will be triggered by anything traumatic, abusive, humiliating, or degrading. It is the theme of extreme trauma and the darkest of human experiences. While not all of us may struggle with its extreme expressions, we may experience rejection subtly in our subconscious, usually in the expression of embarrassment or any form of self-rejection, such as not liking our body. Accompanying thoughts may sound like, I am not good enough. Life has cursed me. I'm so stupid. I'm incapable. I'm worthless. No one loves me. Everyone rejects me. I'm pathetic. I'm awful. I'm disgusting. I should have never been born. I shouldn't be this way. God can't possibly love me. I will never be forgiven. I can't possibly still be lovable. I am evil. I am ugly. I am fat. I am vile. I am sick. I am so demented. I am lost. If projected externally, the same thoughts will arise as they are so disgusting, ugly, worthless, and so on. Due to the traumatic experiences the wound of rejection is usually spawned from, it can be extremely difficult to talk about or face. Thus, out of defense, the mind denies, buries, and represses incidents of rejection, ultimately rejecting reality. This is due to internalizing trauma or shame rather than seeing it as a projection of the other person's theme of consciousness. The rejection we experienced from others is not personal nor true. The wound of rejection is only ignorance begetting ignorance. Hurt people hurting people. And because it is ignorance that creates rejection, everyone involved is actually innocent. This does not mean that an abuser's actions weren't a violation and don't need to be held accountable. It is a reminder that any trauma can only come from a traumatized source. To let go of the wound of rejection and heal it, we have to replace it with compassionate understanding for ourselves and others. Those who rejected, traumatized. I'm even worried about using the word abuse because I'm worried that YouTube is going to flag this. So I might just start mouthing it. I'm sorry, I have to do it. So, those who rejected, traumatized, or hurt us are only projecting their own rejections, traumas, abuse, or hurt. Our impressionable mind then made these painful projections about us, but it was never about us. We were and always are innocent. The wound of rejection subconsciously repeats cycles of that were handed down to it. Thus, I'm just going to say hurt. Thus, hurt people tend to hurt others. To heal, our traumas need to be put in our past as something that does not negatively define us. If we don't, similar scenarios as the original trauma will trigger the mind to think the trauma is still happening now, thus stealing our present as well. There needs to be a clear separation between what happened in the past and our new experiences. Otherwise, we carry the trauma with us forever. Example, PTSD. Our innocence is still there and can never be taken, only temporarily hidden due to misidentification with the trauma of an experience. It is important to acknowledge this cycle so as to not go another day internalizing the rejection others projected onto us. We have to give it back in a sense. See the pain of the other person clearly. They have been rejected, traumatized, or hurt, and tried to pass it on to us. Excuse me. Froggy in my throat, releasing, cleansing, healing. But we don't have to accept it. Therefore, we are their greatest teacher and mirror, only reflecting what is being rejected within themselves. We are infinitely and unconditionally loved, even if those around us didn't know how to properly express it and ended up hurting us traumatically instead. To escape shame, the mind needs to cast blame onto its perpetrators in order to stop identifying with the energy of this experience. Setting healthy boundaries with the people who hurt us is also necessary. And while this can temporarily move us out of self-sabotage and into the next theme of judgment, it is not the final solution. Whatever rejection we have felt due to others' projections, know that they were living with that same rejection themselves, probably even worse. They are not getting away with anything. Our ultimate healing will eventually come through forgiving all those who have wronged us in the past, therefore setting ourselves free. This will naturally arise later in our journey, for when we hold a grudge, we remain trapped in the cycle of rejection. In order to remember our own innocence, we have to remember theirs. For as we do unto others, we do unto ourselves. While this may seem impossible at the moment, the freedom that comes through forgiving ourselves and others will naturally reveal itself as we transition through the themes of consciousness. We can also heal the wound We can also heal the wound of rejection by helping and supporting others who have similar experiences. The greatest healers are the ones who have endured suffering and turned their own traumatic experiences into wisdom for others' healing. Healed people heal people, and I believe that. The new narrative. And I think what I'm going to do, I think I'm just going to read this. I'm just going to finish this wound that we're working on. So we just have one little paragraph left. And then the next reading we can explore the other wounds. I might have to do them like one wound at a time. You can see how my communication is starting to break. So, new narrative. I am innocent. I am always loved. I can never be beyond divinity's love. I am pure. I am perfect as I am. I am always worthy of forgiveness and love. I am whole and complete exactly as I am. I am loved even in my weakest moments. Others' opinions of me have nothing to do with me, but are a reflection of themselves. Boundaries are healthy. Anyone projecting shame is living with their own shame. I give this shame back to its sender. It's healthy for me to identify my... Sorry, I can't say it. It is healthy for me to have boundaries with hurtful people. I let go of the shame projected onto me. I love myself. I am divinely beautiful. I am loved as I am, even with the traumatic experiences I have endured. My trauma does not negatively define me. I am accepted. Others want to love me. Others want to support me. Others want to see me happy. I matter to others. My existence matters. My life matters. My needs matter. My voice matters. I will not allow hurt any longer. I will speak my truth. I will accept my worth. So, like I said, the next one is the wound of judgment, but I can already tell, I know my limit. I can already tell I'm hitting my limit with all that reading. So I am going to end it here. But, my friends, thank you for spending your time with me today. Hopefully that didn't trigger you too much. Sometimes I like this book, but there was some of the examples they use are very they used extreme examples in that chapter, which I understand why they're doing that. But anyway, I'm enjoying reading this book with all of my friends, and I enjoyed looking at that Sacred Wounding deck. I'll probably use it again for Soul Tribe, but I'm going to go spend time with my family now because it's Sunday, and on Sunday afternoons I like to spend time with my kids. But I am sending you all love and light. Thank you for being my friend, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.